it makes me crazy. And you're just like, no, but you need to try at least. I'm not gonna. Like, what the f are we doing here? Well, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Just Shauna here to talk about some friggin' books that I don't want to read. I actually realized I don't know if I've done this actual tag. I've done videos in the past for sure of like anti-TBR, anti-haul. I haven't done one in a minute, but I was looking at it and I tried looking on my channel. I can't find the video. So I don't know if I've ever done this actual tag, and I am doing it on a whim, so I don't even know what the questions are, so this will be fun. We will just be figuring it out as we go together, my answers, I mean. And I will have the original tag linked down below as well. I think it was, who was it? Nicole and her books. So let's get into the questions. Question number 1, a popular book everyone loves that you have no interest in reading. There's several, but the one that just popped to my mind first, so I'll just go with that one, is Babel by R.F. Kuang. R.F. Kuang, I mean, I guess, she wrote the Poppy War series, and I read the first book, like, I don't know if it was right when it first came out, but I read the first book before the second book was out, and there was a lot of stuff that I really liked about it, but ultimately it was a little disappointing. It was underwhelming. I had some issues with it. I didn't love it, and I never continued with the series. I thought about it for a minute because I think it was the second book that a lot of people really loved, but then I saw so many people. I was waiting until like the final book opinions kind of came in, and it seemed like a lot of people who loved the series really didn't end up loving the final book. So because I didn't even really love the first book, I just was like, meh. And she's written now a couple of other things, Yellowface as well, but I think when Babel came out, was the Poppy War series the only like full-length novels that she had published? I'm not sure. At any rate, I just already was like, I didn't love that one book anyway, and I saw some like opinions that like the series overall was kind of underwhelming or disappointing in some ways. And then Babel came out and everyone loved it. But it's like dark academia shit, which just tends to not be my jam. So that's one that I just was like, okay, the combination of a genre that I'm not a huge fan of and doesn't often work for me, and an author that has not really worked for me in the past, let me just not. I don't need to be a dissenting voice because it is what it is. Everyone loves it, and that's great. I love that for everybody who loves that book. Question number 2, a classic book or author you don't have an interest in reading. I would say probably anything H.P. Lovecraft. I mean, there's the whole, he was a terrible, awful human being thing, but mostly because I know there are people who, even people who are, part of the groups that he hated and was terrible about, who still enjoy his works. The whole separate the art from the artist thing, like Black authors who are fans of, the works he created and his impact in the literary world, and who do reimaginings, like Victor Lavelle, for example, is a Black author who is like, I have complicated feelings towards H.P. Lovecraft. Let me reimagine some of his shit from the perspective of a Black man in modern America and kind of play with that, and I love that for them, for anybody who feels that way. But and I can sometimes like separate art from the artist with certain things, and if it's a genre or, works that I like the works enough, whatever. But horror, classic horror stuff just isn't my jam anyway. So again, the combination of these things makes H.P. Lovecraft an author I'll probably never read. Number 3 is similar, but taking out the classic element of it, just an author that you have no interest in reading. And Steven Erikson comes to mind in the adult fantasy world. Just no thank you. And do not bother if you're a freaking huge fan of Malazan and all that shit, and you just ride hard for Steven Erikson, and you're just like, no, but you need to try at least. I am not gonna, for a variety of reasons. Number 4, an author who you have read a couple of books from, but to have decided that they are not for you. I mean, okay, I do still at some point in my life plan to attempt reading at least the first book in Stormlight Archive. However, Brandon Sanderson is just kind of an author that I read the Mistborn series, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, all right. I loved the first book in the Mistborn series, and then the second book was kind of like, all right, it was dwindling. And then by the third book, I simply did not care anymore. I lost pretty much all interest in it, and kind of half DNF'd the last like 20% of the book. I've talked about this before. I like barely read it. I skim read it, heavily skim read it, where I essentially DNF'd the last little bit. So yeah, but like I do still want to try Stormlight Archive. I keep putting it off because I just have this feeling that it's going to be a waste of my time. I'm going to DNF it. I'm going to have people fucking yelling at me in the comments. You're stupid because you don't like it. Like, I don't know. I'm just like, do I want to fuck with it? I don't know. R.F. Kuang is another one, like I said. Honestly, V.E. Schwab, there's a book that I have a NetGalley e-arc of hers that's coming out, and I think next year. And I'm interested in that, and like there's a couple of her works, her more recent works, that I am still interested enough in, and like Vicious, I still probably want to try it, but I loved the first couple of books I read of hers, like the Darker Shade of Magic series. I like really liked it, but then that last book, just some shit happened that I was like, what the fuck are we doing here? And then The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, that's one that like maybe someday I will, but I've just heard such mixed things that make me like, I don't know. The Our Dark Duet series, I read that, the duology, and I kind of, there's like elements of her writing that I like really latched onto and I really liked. But then it was like the plots. Her plots just usually feel a little like, okay, I don't know. So I've just kind of, it's not like I have written off V.E. Schwab. There's that feeling, that hesitancy of like, it's probably going to be a miss though, so why bother? So yeah, I don't know. There's others too, but those are the ones I can think of now. Number 5, a genre you have no interest in, or a genre you tried to get into and couldn't. I mean, horror, like true horror, is something that I can pick up here and there. It's not something I gravitate toward and like, that's my shit, but like, I've picked up horror that I'm like, oh, that's pretty good, or I enjoyed that, that was fun. So that's one that like, is fine. I'm just not a huge fan. I can do kind of dark, taboo-ish romance here and there too, but like really dark, like basically abuser romance, like bully, but like abuse romance that I've only read excerpts from and like seen people talk about in reviews and stuff. But there's just, I don't know, I just can't get behind it. It's not something I have any interest in. And I will say probably just contemporary romance in general is a genre that every now and then I find one that I'm like, yes, love that. But even the ones I love, like Abby Jimenez, those first 2 books at least, I haven't read Just Once for the Summer or whatever, Just for the Summer, that one. I haven't read that one yet. But those other 2 I really liked. I read one Emily Henry, and the Abby Jimenez I really liked, but with both of them, even though I like loved certain elements enough to like, yeah, I could see myself rereading, at least the second book. Yours Truly, I could see myself rereading, but even that one, there's huge elements of it that just drive me up a fucking wall. And I think it's just I cannot pull myself and how I view things and how I would handle situations out of contemporary romance at all. I struggle with that in like fantasy and other shit too, but it's like with contemporary romance in particular, I'm just like, holy shit, like the lack of communication bullshit, or the like, I'm just going to assume that they couldn't possibly love me even though they're expressing it over and over again and everyone else can see it. But like, no, like, I'm so insecure that there's no way I can take these obvious hints and like think maybe this person could actually care about me. Just all of that shit, it makes me crazy. So it is a genre that I do try here and there still, but it is one that I don't think I will ever be like a contemporary romance girly. It's just not in the cards. I'll find one every now and then that hits just right and that I can overlook the things I don't like enough that like, oh, I could reread this as like a fluffy, just for fun. But it's very rare. It is very rare. Number 6, a book that you have bought but will never read. I mean, I don't do that on purpose, but I definitely do buy books sometimes and then later on end up unhauling them before I even pick them up. Typically after several years have gone by, and if I'm like, okay, I've had this shit on my shelves for 2+ years, never once have even like contemplated picking it up, or every time I think about it, I'm just like, let's just get rid of it. So yeah, but I mean, I don't have one in particular at the moment, I guess. Number 7, a series you have no interest in reading, or a series you've started and DNF'd. So many. I have started and DNF'd just countless series where I pick up the first book, and sometimes where I just DNF the first book and I don't even read the first book. And so technically I DNF the series, but like, and then plenty where I read the first book, DNF the rest of the series. Or there's plenty of times too where I've read, if it's like a trilogy, I've read the first 2 books and then DNF the third book or didn't even pick up the third book. Like, it happens all the time. A more recent one where I did that was the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams. I quite enjoyed the first book. My initial feelings about it waned over time. Like, once I went back to like talk about it, I was like, I don't think I actually liked the first one as much as I like thought I did. There were elements of it that I liked enough that I like kind of was clinging to. And then the second book just kind of was a little underwhelming for me, and then I just never finished it. I asked Elle how it ended because there was a few things I did have curiosity about, but as you know, if you have watched any of my videos in the past, curiosity is not enough of a reason for me to continue. I will DNF real quick and just Google or ask a friend if I'm curious enough. Number 8, a new release you have no interest in reading. What's like a recent new release? I don't know. I mean, this year, the final book in the Crescent City series came out, and ya girl ain't reading that shit. Oh, it makes me so sad. I still have House of Earth and Blood, and I will reread that book at some point because I fucking loved it. It was just like peak. There was about, I always say this, there's a few hundred too many pages for sure, but even with that, it's like peak Sarah J. Maas for me personally, like what I love about the Sarah J. Maas that I have loved. And it was just like, just delicious, fun, entertaining nonsense that I ate up. But then that second book, man, holy shit. I don't think I've ever experienced such drastic difference from one book in a series to the next. Like, love, will reread, gets me hyped. Both times that I've read that first book, I get like hyped and emotional, and I'm like, oh my God. And then that second book was a painful experience. One of the worst books I've ever read. And yeah, I'm never gonna read that third book. It's simply not going to happen. There we are. That is all of the questions. Let me know what some of your answers might be to any of these. Maybe like a recent release or something from this year that you have no interest in checking out. Curious what your answer might be for that specifically. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.